So wait, I have to turn my old truck into a mobile hot tub?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Mobile hot tub. You put plexiglass in the back, get it full of water. It looks like, and you
So it
can
doesn't splash out.
Exactly, and it could be like the next Uber, right?
This is a great idea.
And if you want to make extra money, what you do is you get yourself, like one of those Reverend collared shirts.
I'm a licensed
legit.
reverend. Yeah.
Oh, you are.
I am.
You're
Yeah.
halfway there. Then all I have to say is mobile baptism.
Oh my God.
You can.
This is brilliant. So many.
Save so many people that way, Greg. And believe me, there are a lot of Portlanders need saving.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I'll come to you. Yeah. I'll show right up. I mean, this could be, I could battle Uber. I could battle priests,
Who doesn't want a good priest?
Clearly, this is an idea. All right, we need to take this off the air, though. I don't want somebody stealing this idea right now. Copyrighted. Hello, everyone. This is Trends with Benefits. This is our weekly Roundtable Tech podcast. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are. We do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. If you are watching live, we do broadcast live on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Hello. And then we're also, of course, available as an audio podcast, so hit subscribe to that wherever you get podcasts. Each week, we have a different topic that we will cover and discuss. It's not going to be about my truck, although that would be an amazing VR experience, because that's what we're talking. It wouldn't be. We're talking about virtual reality today. So there's a lot of promises that have been made about VR. I expected we'd be living in like a holodeck by this point, and we're not. So we're going to kind of cover some of the things that have happened, a little bit of the history, and where we're going with it. But to get started here, let's do our roundtable cast of characters. I'm Greg Nibbler, and to my right,
hello, I'm Jess Serbaugh. How are you?
doing good, a.k.a. Turbo.
Ah, yes, there it is.
Gotta get that into your life.
Got it. I'll work that in.
Yeah.
I'll work that in. It's officially official.
Yes,
It's officially official. Yeah,
All right.
Hot Nozzle, I believe, is back next week.
Yes.
But yeah, we've got Turbo.
The return of Nozzle.
Return of the Nuts.
And on the end,
Caleb Dennison, a.k.a. The Whiskey Mist, a.k.a. Chicken Bone, a.k.a. Not Nozzle.
not nozzle. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Wait, not nozzle. The
taken
double
me a
negative
second
there
to
is
wrap
really
my head
throwing me
around that
off.
one.
Yeah, that's something the math wizards will have to figure out. All right, and to my left.
I am Drew Prindle, a.k.a. Professor Prindle. I do the history segments.
Yes, indeed. So with the history of virtual reality, there's so many different things that we're going to cover on this or try to get to in as much time as we have. But it's always good to do the history segment and understand where VR came from.
Yeah, it's kind of illuminating sometimes. So VR has a very weird history. I felt like the best way to break it down was by decade, because it was so different from decade to decade. So it started, like, the first ideas kind of started trickling out around like the 1950s. There was this guy, Morton Heilig, who wrote about this, what he called experience theater, which was kind of like a movie that had more than just like sights and sounds coming into it. And he started, trying to come up with ways to do that. So then 12 years later, he actually built this thing called the Sensorama, which was...
I remember this.
I love that name.
Yeah, and it was
Sensorama.
it was the manifestation of that idea of experience theater that he had come up with years earlier. And it incorporated sight, sound, smells, and then also like breeze in your face. And it was this crazy rig. It looks kind of like an arcade cabinet, and you like stick your face on it and you put your chin in this one area and kind of move the stereoscopic like vision things and to like get them to line up with your eyes. And keep in mind, this was before like digital video or anything existed.
Right.
So it had these giant spool reels of film spinning and everything. And he actually created a bunch of different like experiences. And one of them, I think the coolest one, was like riding a motorcycle on just down a road. And it had, like a little throttle on it. And as you would spin it, it would actually speed up the film. So it looks like it goes faster, and the wind would rush through your face and the engine would make noise and you would smell like grass of the fields that you were passing by or whatever. So it was kind of a cool little experiment and installment of like what the future of, entertainment could be like, right? But it wasn't exactly designed for mass consumption.
Right.
So, it took a while for us to like shrink that down and take that concept into something that it more resembles what we have now, which is headsets. So the first headset, head-mounted like VR display, wasn't invented until 1968.
Was it like two-tube TVs?
They actually had to hang it from the ceiling.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I knew it.
Yeah, it was too heavy just to wear with like a normal headband. So yeah. So it took a while, obviously, for the technology to catch up with like our imagination. So for the longest time, like through most of the 70s, VR wasn't really good enough for anybody to have in their home. It was kind of just like an experiment. So like NASA was playing around with it. There were a couple like entertainment companies doing it on a very experimental basis. They would have like, a room where they did VR or something. But for the most part, it still remained science fiction. Then the 80s happened, and kind of the concept just started to really kick off. I'd say like the late 80s more so than the regular 80s, because keep in mind, like video games were still extremely primitive at this time. Like Atari wasn't around until 1972, and video game graphics really didn't improve like a ton for a while there. So like VR stuff, we're not talking like you put it on and it's like you're in a different world. You're putting it on and you're like, oh, look at these, I can see lines. Like vector graphics. It was not great. 1990s is when we started to see slow progress and all of that, because that's when all of these like video game console companies were kind of ramping up their efforts. And once VR hit and became kind of like a hot thing, they all started, throwing their hat in the ring. So Sega VR, they put out like a little VR headset.
Really?
I didn't know that.
Around the Genesis time? Sega
I think it was
Genesis
before
time,
then. It
wow.
was, yeah. Then there was another company called Virtuality that I had never heard of. They made headsets and actual like gloves that you could interact with stuff, and they had like a VR arcade where you could actually have multiple people inside it, kind of like what they're doing now.
Right.
Crazy.
But
That was
very,
in the
very
90s?
Yeah, this was in the 90s. Can you believe that? There was also Nintendo's Virtual Boy, which I think a lot of people will remember. And then we had stuff like the Power Glove and all that.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
So-
Power Glove, yeah.
so, like,
what was
there-
that movie? The Power Glove? I'll look it up.
I can't remember. But anyway, this was like the 1990s were like a year like expanding on just like the visuals and the graphics that VR was capable of, and also a lot of like experimentation with like inputs. But then after that, it just died off. Like I think because it wasn't as cool as the sci-fi ideal of VR. Like we knew what we wanted, but we couldn't really get there.
Right.
So in the 2000s, that was like the dead zone for VR. Nobody gave a crap about VR from like the year 2000 to the year 2010. There was like nothing, no interest.
It kind of got dismissed. It's kind of like, you know what, this is dumb. Let's
Yeah,
just
I think
forget
it kind of
about
like
this and move on.
it was almost like it died with the .com bubble, right? Like everybody was like, that's not the way of the future. The future is internet, apps, smartphones, all of this stuff. That's what we're going to focus on. We don't give a crap about VR. But then in 2010, stuff started to change. Palmer Luckey, the guy who founded Oculus, that was when he made the first prototype of the Oculus Rift. By 2012, they had a massively successful Kickstarter project, and that was like this kind of aha moment. Everybody was like, oh shit, VR's back, let's do this. And then that just kind of sets off like a cascade of like competition, because everybody realizes, oh my god, like our graphics capabilities have totally caught up with our imaginations at this point. We can actually do something cool here. And everything had been made cheaper by cell phones at that point, because just electronic components and supply chains and everything, they were all in place. So it was really just off to the races at that point. 2014, PlayStation gets into the game with PSVR, which at the time they called Project Morpheus.
I remember that.
Then Google comes in and is all like weird and like, we're going to make like Google Cardboard. We're going to use phones to do it. And it's going to be super cheap and everybody can have it. 2016, HTC gets into the game with the HTC Vive, which was and still kind of is one of the most advanced VR headsets in the game. And that one was cool because it wasn't just like you were sitting there and moving your head around. You could actually walk around and you had space to move in the environment.
We had a lot of fun playing with that.
Oh
here
my
in the
God. I
office.
remember when it came out and we saw it for the first time at CES, I was blown away.
It was pretty cool.
They had that one where you're just standing there and a whale like floats by you. Oh my God, that melted my brain. It was so sweet. But now looking at it now, it probably looks super dated.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just kind of the early to mid 2010s was like, that was when there was a ton of interest and experimentation, and it's still kind of continuing now. We're sort of like, it seems like we're kind of taking off the gas a little bit. It's not going as fast. We're kind of refining what we thought of in the past decade a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, anytime we start talking about VR, I think back to the late 80s, early 90s, where you were seeing it in movies and it had that sort of sci-fi futuristic kind of thing going on for it. And I remember thinking, hey, that's kind of cool back then. And then I look at where we're at now and I'm just like, why, dating back to the late 80s, early 90s till now, like, why is VR not a big thing? Why is it having so much trouble catching on and becoming mainstream? And I keep forgetting that the 2000s, like up until 2010, it didn't go anywhere. We forgot about it. We only recently resurrected it. So when you think about it in its current iteration, VR's only really been around for about 10 years.
Well, and you had all those people that once they, things like Oculus and then all these other companies that try to get into it and all of a sudden be like, oh, you want VR? Okay, here's some VR, like the Samsung Gear VR. Like I had that. A buddy of mine from Samsung actually loaned it to me. I still have it. Sorry, Rick. I forgot to give that back. Just remember that. But it was pretty cool for the time, like for what you could do with it. But you used a phone for it, and the phone would overheat. And so you could only really use it for about 15 minutes before it would shut down.
You could only use it for like 2 minutes before your face would sweat.
Yeah.
That was the most annoying
hot
part.
too.
There weren't fans on that thing. It was just your phone just working overtime trying to process like 3D graphics environments.
Battery draining. Luckily, it didn't blow up. But different ones like that. But now, and then you got into the really good ones like the HTC Vive and the full-on Oculus Rift, which are Oculus setup, which were really expensive. I mean, those were hard things to get into. You had to have like a really powerful computer to run it, and you had to buy the actual hardware of the VR set.
Yeah, you had to get like towers.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that was just a lot to try to get into it. Caleb, I know you have a lot of thoughts on VR.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the problem, I keep trying to answer my own question, which is why is this not a huge thing right now? Because it has so much potential, and I think like historically the reason that it hasn't become so prevalent is because it's been expensive, and involved a lot of setup stuff, especially with the first Oculus, and then all the sensors everywhere, and having to have a really powerful computer to run it,
have room in your house to be able to use it.
Exactly. I think I don't know. I do have a lot of thoughts about VR, but my mind keeps going to video games. Like, what else are we going to use this for? And I know there's this balance that we have to look at between commercial applications and consumer applications,
right?
Because it really does have a lot of potential. I just don't understand why people are not quick to warm up to it.
Well, I think that price barrier was a huge thing because the ordinary person's not going to go out there unless you're really into it and you know what it's like. Most people haven't even experienced it because they haven't been around it.
Well, that's probably one of the main things then, because I know that I was always like, okay, I mean, that's cool, like, fine.
Right.
I did it once a long, long time ago, and then more recently, a friend of mine has one, and I like used it and was like, this is so cool. Like, this is fun. Like, but I think that like if you haven't really gotten the opportunity to do that, then
are you going to go spend $1,200 on a souped up computer and then another $700 on the rig? Like, probably not. Right. There are some things now, where you're starting to get the headsets to be down a little bit lower in price. They're not the super powerful ones that those other ones were, but they're pretty good. You have the Oculus Quest, which is $399. Still expensive, but I mean, that's down to what, a video game platform would be, or our console. And then you've got the HTC Cosmos, which is $699. I guess they have another one that's going to be coming out that's going to be a little bit cheaper than that, so I'm going to guess it competes with Oculus Quest, but still a little more accessible. And and that's standalone. You don't have to buy anything to tether to it. It's got its own, I believe the Quest has its own hand sensors on it, so on the front of it, so you don't even have to wear gloves or anything. You can read where your hands are.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Great.
So it makes it a little bit more accessible. But
I think another part of the issue is like early on there wasn't a lot of like content that you really that was great and was like cool enough for you to actually spend like over $1,000 on a whole computer and headset and all that stuff.
Right.
There weren't really any blockbuster games. There was nothing that was like, oh man, I'm gonna go pick up an HTC so that I can play X.
Right.
But we're
it's like
starting
Netflix in a theater.
We're starting to get some of that, right? So like there have been a couple big hit games that have kind of had breakout success. Super Hot is the first one that comes to mind. There's Beat Saber. I'm sure you guys have seen Beat Saber. It's where like you're swinging lightsabers and it's kind of like Dance Dance Revolution, but you got to chop blocks in like different directions to the beat of music in VR. That one's pretty sweet. And now we've got this new Half-Life game coming out, which I think is that might be another one that because it's totally in VR. It's the first VR Half-Life game.
Yeah. There's a Darth Vader game,
Vader Immortal,
that I think got people pretty excited about the idea of VR.
They did a lot of press on that one as far as pushing out commercials. They paid a lot for promoting that one, and Vader Immortal. I don't know how it ended up selling. I mean, it looked cool because you fight Darth Vader with a lightsaber.
But the thing is, I think the important thing is that now we finally have like a little bit of a backlog of cool stuff that you can. That's actually like.
Do you have a
enough
catalog of
it's like
content?
destination content, like that you would actually like buy a VR thing just so you can experience that.
The platform situation seems weird to me.
Yeah.
Also, like if you're creating a game, writing code for a game, I mean, are you writing it for Android? Are you writing it for PC? Is there some isolated individual kind of like OS that you can write for? And I'm confused about that. I mean, I'm not an expert in VR. I'm just looking at the situation and thinking, how could I integrate VR with stuff I already have, or with a machine I already have, or a phone I've already got, or something,
Yeah.
Or do I
Without
have
buying
to,
something
is it this
separate?
closed ecosystem? You buy the thing, and then you have to buy the games that are made for that thing, and that's the only way you can enjoy them. And
I mean, I think that in order to actually get like quality VR, I think that's where you have to go. I think you have to buy something, because I mean, like the Gear VR was a great idea. It doesn't practically. I don't think it works. Maybe with some of the newer phones, better processing. Maybe we could go back to that and try something where you could actually put your phone back in. Because I know there's processing could definitely change that. But right now, I feel like that's what you have to do. You have to actually get one of the heads.
I feel like PlayStation VR saw some decent adoption, and I think maybe the reason that it worked well was because it was for PlayStation. People are making games for PlayStation, and therefore, it integrates with something that you're going to use outside of just VR. It's an add-on thing, and you can experience games, which is obviously a popular way of experiencing VR.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Like, I kind of forgot about that it was actually a really good integration because it is PlayStation.
Right.
Half the people have PlayStations, so of gaming anyway, and yeah, you can integrate into that. I know for the PS5 too. That's future stuff, but it sounds like they're going to be really making that more robust for a PSVR 2 or something like that.
I think they spotted an opportunity,
Yeah.
and realized, if we really lean into this, we could make it something big out of it.
Well, Jess, let me ask you, when you tried your friend's VR system, what was it that you tried, and what did you like the most?
It was it was actually exploring oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name now.
One of the exploring ones?
No, it was his daughter's game, actually. It was what's the name of Coco? It was the movie Coco that is like the beautiful like illustrations of. It's like
I've heard that's actually a really good experience.
Amazing movie, but if you like look the colors and everything, and basically you were able to like explore the town.
What?
And it was so cool. Because it had like audio as well, so you're completely immersed. It was just beautiful. So yeah, that was my first. You can't like recreate you wouldn't think you could recreate the colors in that sense, and actually feel like you're in the world. So,
yeah.
That's cool.
That's a pretty good use case. I mean, for me personally, I like I liked the space one on it because it's good. Zip around the solar system and look at the planets. That's kind of stuff I like. But those interactive like experiences, things like that. Looking forward, though, I mean, the way that it's being developed right now, we've actually interviewed quite a few people on Digital Trends Live that Jess has booked that are working on VR for that, and from the consumer side of things. One of them being more like the social interaction aspect, because you had Facebook Horizons, which I don't know if everybody remembers that. They made a big push about this. This is what the future was going to be. The commercial is terrible.
Oh God.
Oh, it's so you could not make a cheesier commercial.
You should
than this one.
Definitely go if you're go to YouTube and watch the commercial just for the entertainment value.
It'll make you throw up in your mouth.
It'll make you never want to use this ever just by watching this commercial, unless you're one of these people.
And that explains why it's not a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were trying to make it just this interaction of a place, almost like Second Life in VR.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can fly a plane with your friends. No, just a hard pass. But there are, though, other ones that are working on things like that, saying that VR and social media is going to be a thing. And there's some aspects to that I guess I could kind of see,
Drew, weren't you talking about, like, somebody trying to develop VR? Somebody was talking about developing VR that you could use while you're taking a ride in a car, like you're in an Uber or something like that.
That was something we actually also interviewed
on DT Live.
On DT Live, yeah. Let me get the name of them. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called. Oh, HoloRide. They're called HoloRide. So this was, and they're one of a bunch of different companies. So the idea for that is you're taking a ride share and you think about the future of Uber and Lyft and all of that. Who wants to talk to the driver? Nobody. So me.
Or listen to their music.
Oh God, no. And it's no offense, but no, I don't want to talk. So with this is some kind of idea where you could actually have entertainment. So you would be in the car. The way HoloRide works is you put on a VR headset, and it actually integrates with the map of where you're going, so it knows how the road's going to be turning generally, and it can change your experience and the time of the experience based on that. So when the car turns and you feel the force turn, like the scenery that you're watching, the game that you're playing, or one of them was actually just like a tour of dinosaurs. Like it changes.
The Jurassic Park tour.
Yeah,
dude,
like a
I
Jurassic
would
Park
be
tour.
so
Amazing,
down for that.
right?
It's so cool. Yeah.
Can you imagine you're riding in an Uber and you like look backwards and a T-Rex is chasing
Yes.
you and you go,
Yeah,
"Ah,
right.
step on it.
That's exactly what it was like. It was awesome. And so they're saying that could be a new kind of experience. And then even going forward, when we have autonomous cars.
That's just so clever, man.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of exciting part about all this, right? Is like this
Right.
is just like such new uncharted territory, and I feel like people are really just starting to get into like, oh my god, there's so much more possible, and really starting to explore what they can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Holoride just sounds
We were
awesome.
talking to a musician as well who had
did.
mentioned about using like VR to experience like in a concert. So like
Yeah.
not just like watching the show, but maybe you're sitting next to the drummer and you can actually see exactly what he's doing, things like that. So using
I love the whole like ability to see something from different angles at your discretion, with the click of a button. They kind of did that with VR at like basketball games. They had
did
a
a
number of
little
different
bit.
cameras stationed throughout the stadium, and you could, switch yourself to whichever one you wanted to watch from. We could do that with so much more. Concerts is a great idea. You could actually hang out next to whichever musician on the stage that you wanted to. That'd be super awesome. I can think of a number of different. The Olympics, right?
Right.
What if you wanted to just kind of move about the complex and see things from different angles? That would be
Without
fun.
getting coronavirus.
Exactly. Exactly.
That could be another big boost for that. I totally forgot. We actually interviewed Steve Aoki too, and Steve
yeah.
he was talking about how he's incorporating VR into his performances. Like I don't know when it's going to happen, but that same thing where you can see it from his point of view, or the audience, or somebody else, like different points of the room.
He can throw like cakes and pies at the audience
Yeah, basically.
virtually.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. He also said
Freaking
you're going to be able to
ridiculous.
experience his ball pit at his house, which was kind of weird, but I probably still do it.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
great.
Fine. Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds awesome.
I know.
Do it.
It's like all right. So yeah, looking at those kinds of aspects too, of different experiences. I guess going back to that side of things.
They need to develop the haptic feedback
Yeah.
for this, so you can actually feel some
Feel the
stuff.
ball pit?
Yeah, feel the ball pit. That's what I want.
See, the interesting thing is we're totally working on that right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a bunch of companies that are developing little accessories that go with the headset that you have, whether it's a fan that blows wind faster or slower depending on how you move through the game, or like gloves that have actual haptic feedback, or there's the Core FX vest that like makes it so you can feel where you're getting shot or punched or whatever in like an RPG. And it's totally just going full circle back to that Sensorama idea of just incorporating all of the senses, not just sight and sound into
Right.
the experience.
Who's got the trademark for Sensorama?
I know I need that.
Yeah.
We need to bring that back.
That needs
sure.
to somebody's got to get that.
Didn't somebody try a treadmill type
Yeah.
of thing
Yeah.
where it moved with you?
Virtuix Omni is what
Yeah.
that one was called, and you wore these weird little like hoof shoes that like would slide on this like slightly concave like platform.
That's right.
So that you could run and stuff. Yeah, that one was pretty silly.
So yeah, I've got to look up that video. Sorry, I'm stuck on the visual of that. Just kind of going through VR, and I know we're kind of covering a lot here in a short amount of time, but talking about some of the commercial aspects, meetings, and this actually does tie in with coronavirus and everything else as far as people not meeting in person. The idea that you can have VR meetings or even AR meetings, but virtually meeting up with people in a space where you could have your own avatar and interact with them. We actually tried this out. There's a company called Spatial who is making something. It's called Spatial VR, but it would work on a number of different platforms. So you wouldn't have to have like an Oculus or Vive. You could use your phone or anything really that would interact with it. And they create an avatar for you, and then you interact with everybody.
Do we get to see your avatar?
I don't know if we grabbed it or not. I might not have grabbed
So
it. Okay,
was
that's
this
good.
like-
I'm glad we didn't grab it. You do not want to see it.
This was
We
like
do though.
this was a true to life avatar. It was like actually looked like you
was a
were you like a
3D rendering of
unicorn
me.
with fangs and
No.
like a mohawk. Or,
It was me, but when I demoed it, they gave me the wrong headset, so I was just looking at myself moving around the room, and it was really unnerving.
that's weird.
But the idea was
Uncanny
pretty
Valley.
cool. Like you meet in this virtual room, and you can have a space, and work on projects together, and they showcase all these different things you could do. It's like that idea. I could definitely see that being something that could have a commercial or office use case.
I mean, are you really going to use that instead of like video conferencing?
Well, this was like you could work on projects together, or like designing things.
Like
I guess it makes sense for
or-
like design, where like
Yeah.
there's some object that you can all collectively like edit and play with in real time. But I feel like that's fairly niche. Like that's only true. Like I don't know. That's going to be a very small group of people that's going to get into that.
That'll work on that one. Well,
I'd love to have an avatar that is absolutely nothing like me.
Yeah, no,
you
that's
know?
what I'm interested
Where-
in. I want to show up to meetings as like a biker.
Yeah.
Well, now you're talking like Ready Player One.
Yeah,
size.
exactly.
That's where we would go with that. What would your avatar be?
Oh God, don't make me think about that right
Okay,
now, like
everybody
out
think about
loud.
what your
It's
avatar would be.
probing the deepest, darkest portions of my brain.
You do not want to know. The other thing that too I've seen a lot of is like health tech VR.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a real one because we've interviewed
Yeah.
a few people that are like that.
Yes.
Like talking about different ways of
We have.
like doctors can connect.
Yeah, definitely. I believe there was Helium VR that we spoke
Helium
to as
VR.
well. That everything was supposed to. It's supposed to calm you essentially. It helps with anxiety, depression, things like that. But you would. What was it? It tracked your.
You use
put
an
like a
actual,
headset
like,
thing.
sensor for your brain waves, so it would
Exactly.
track your brain waves and then correspond that with
And
what
it
you're
showed
seeing.
you on like you could see where like if you started to get your brain activity got too large, you could see it go above, so you could
Oh
know
my
to like
God.
calm back down and focus.
Wouldn't that stress you out more? You're like, oh God, I'm stressing out.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
lights
It
going
did.
higher.
When I was doing it, I was like, I kept like playing with it to see, and so I got
See
my
if you
brain
could
really
stress out.
busy, and it was really really
I'm stressed
interesting.
out right now. Look at it.
I interviewed this really cool company at CES that was using a sensor that you wore on your head to read the different brainwave patterns that you had, and then there were games that you pulled up on your phone, and what you had to do was you kind of learned how to complete the games with your thoughts. So if the idea was to blow up jellyfish, for instance, you would ultimately figure.
What do you mean by blow them up? Like explosion, or are you inflating
important detail.
jellyfish?
No, just like explosion. Like
Okay.
you destroy.
I
Like
just wanted to clarify that was very
You blew them
important
up
for
a
the
lot. There we go.
visuals.
There's these little jellyfish floating around. The idea is for you to kind of blow them up, and it would only work if you were generating the correct kind of brainwaves, and it was supposed to be this kind of therapeutic thing. Sounds really weird, but it was
That's
actually.
cool.
Sounds
I
like
love that.
psychopath
Yeah.
shit,
It's
like,
actually really.
just making stuff explode with your mind.
Well, and it wasn't
awesome.
just exploding jellyfish. They were like, getting the basketball to go through the net, or
Be the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But I think the whole system would have worked better if it was implemented with VR instead of you just like holding your phone and looking at your phone. If you could just put on a one all-in-one system and use that. The idea was it helped generate patterns that allowed you to sleep better. The idea was it induced the right. I can't remember what kind of brainwaves there are, but
Theta
it
waves.
yeah, theta. It basically helped you prep yourself for sleep, where you would sleep better at the right level of sleep and for longer without waking up. And they did a lot of studies that showed that it worked. So I could see something
Really?
like that getting ported over to VR. Yeah.
I like
It's
that.
clever,
I would do
but at
that.
the same time, like really sticking a screen on my face is how I go to sleep easier. That sounds
Well,
silly
no.
to me.
What
the
the
screen,
thing
solve the
is,
screen.
you do it during the day in like 5-minute increments.
Oh,
so
so
you
it's
do it a
like-
couple of times
Gotcha. Like
during
brain
the
training.
day, and then exactly. And then so by the time you are needing to go to sleep, you're naturally moving that direction with
Gotcha.
your brainwaves.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and then also I think aren't they? They're starting to do VR surgical operations, right?
Yeah.
There's some experimentation with that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of instances in China where they said they did it using VR over 5G.
Right.
Using their 5G network. I mean, yeah,
We use all of the technology at our disposal
I mean, it's
to play with life or death.
whether or not that happened, I don't know. But the idea is that eventually, be able to do that.
Well, if you could have the right resolution for VR, like I think either 4K or 8K, so that it looked really,
Yeah,
really
you
real.
want high def
Yeah.
guts when you're on the operating
Oh
table.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think 5G I think 5G is what's going to be critical to unlocking like VR really taking off because
Yeah.
We do want independent headsets, right? We don't want to be tethered to something.
No.
And, for the kind of graphics that we want and the kind of, I think we need edge computing and 5G to do all this. So that the headset is really just a display, right? And everything, all the hardcore number crunching and graphics processing happens, at a huge computer server farm somewhere and is instantaneously delivered to the headset via 5G. So there's no lag or latency. And I think 5G could be the thing that opens the door for VR just really taking off.
Well, then the headsets could get way smaller.
Yeah.
It could just be something that you just strap on really.
It basically just a smart display.
blockers.
Yeah. Blue block.
Or send it to the chip at the base of your skull, And
Yeah.
There you go.
bend it, go send it right to your
Build
optical
it all
nerve.
in.
Yeah.
Skip the headset entirely. That's where we're
Perfect.
headed.
Plug in.
Yeah.
Yep, that's how it's going to work. Well, I think we're out of time because there's so much to talk about with this and just where to go. But we've got a lot of stuff at Digital Trends. Drew, did you decide what your avatar is?
Oh God, no.
Okay, damn it. That didn't work out. Caleb, what would yours be?
I don't think I should say.
Okay, I'm realizing this is just not going to work out.
Very
well for everybody.
personal question.
Oh yeah, if
There
you're
it
watching
is.
live,
I remember
that is
now.
my avatar.
guy.
You
So
look kind of like Data from Star Trek.
yeah, it was. That was the view I had of just me like walking around everywhere.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I
so
can see VR Greg just
it does look like I have
floating
a ring in
around.
that.
and-
Yeah, I did see that.
Is that
yeah.
VR Craig? It's hard to tell. The smug look on his
That
face.
could be Craig. I don't know where they got that
that's
picture
Craig.
from. Like, why
That-
is that so smug? Anyway, send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com. Let us know if there's a topic you want to cover. Next week, we'll talk about augmented reality. So get into something that's actually even more tangible that a lot of people are incorporating in. A lot to talk about. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another episode. Goddamn Craig.
He's
Freaking
everywhere.
Craig.